Hi, everyone. David Aragona and Mike Beer here, taking a look at the feature race at Aqueduct on Saturday. It is the Grade 2 Wood Memorial, race 12 on a 13 race card, and this culminates the New York route to the Kentucky Derby and really culminates the Kentucky Derby prep races, at least the 100-point ones this week. And we have three of them across the country: the Santa Anita Derby, the Bluegrass, and this Wood Memorial here in New York. And Mike, of those three races, this is probably the deepest field for handicappers, as there is a lot of horses to consider in this race. And you can kind of tell from the morning line, I wasn't really sure where to go. I did make Rodriguez the slight favorite on the line at 5-2 over Captain Cook. I kind of wonder if I should have reversed those two, because I know Captain Cook has garnered a lot of support recently for that visually impressive win in the Withers. But Bob Baffert horses do typically take money when they come to New York.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it could get close between those two. We'll see how that all plays out. But you're right, David, the three prep races, it seems like the real quality is in the other two prep races. This is the race, though, where, everybody's got something to prove. It's a big field, and it's just really, really competitive. Even though the two favorites are on the two inside posts, they're hardly standouts, I think.
Yeah, and I guess how competitive you think this race is really depends on your opinion of those two horses, Rodriguez and Captain Cook. And I think that's a good segue to the Timeform US Pace Projector, because it's a large field of 12. Both of these horses have drawn the two inside post positions, and I think they're both horses that might need specific kinds of trips, Mike. And I wonder if they're going to get them here breaking from the inside, because there's plenty of pace in this race drawn to their outside. You've got to imagine Sand Devil's going to go forward, stretching out to the two turns for the first time. The number 9, Bear Claw Necklace, I don't know why he's in here if they're not going to the front. And Grande's got plenty of tactical speed. You even got a horse like Mai Matoli putting the blinkers on, so he could be aggressive. So it's very easy to see this pace heating up on the front end.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. Even before seeing the pace projector, just going through the race the first time, I felt like there was plenty of pace in here. And just to add, maybe some fuel to that fire, I mean, the longer I looked at it, David, the more I just thought Mike Smith is riding Rodriguez here from the rail. I'll be surprised if this horse isn't going and trying to make the lead into the first turn.
And let's begin our conversation with that horse that's drawn in the inside post position, the number 1, Rodriguez. And we'll take a look at his race 2 back when he was second to last year's 2-year-old champion Citizen Bull in the Robert B. Lewis in early February. Now, this was his first start since he broke his maiden. And Mike, they were aggressive with him when he got the job done in that maiden score, leading from gate to wire. That was the best race of his career here into 100 buyer. If he posts a number like that against this field, he's probably going to find himself in the winner's circle on Saturday. Since then, he's been in races that featured Bob Baffert stablemates that have been ridden more aggressively than he was, and he's kind of been put into that stalking position, and maybe he just doesn't love to raid off of horses. Interestingly, they're taking the blinkers off for this race, but I wouldn't take that as a sign that they're going to get less aggressive with him, because if you watch some of his morning training coming in here, he worked with Barnes 2 back on March 23rd and outworked that horse, having taken the blinkers off, looking more aggressive in that morning drill. And as you said, with Mike Smith aboard, he's typically not one that takes anything away from horses coming out of the gate.
Yeah, I just thought he was going to go to the lead here and just see if it played out differently. Obviously, I feel like I can't say that I love either of his last 2 races, David, but I feel like if you want to be a little bit lenient, you just say he was just in against way better horses in both of them. And Baffert ships him over here. This is a way softer spot for this horse. And I guess we'll just find out how good he actually is here in this spot. He seems well spotted to me. I would just also point out that the one win you talked about with the 100 buyer speed figure, they didn't really make him go fast on the lead that day. And I do think they will make him go fast on the lead here if they're looking for it. He also had Lasix on for that race, and he hasn't had it for the last 2 starts. And it's not like those 2 races, even against better horses, they give him no edge on this field.
Yeah, I think those are all fair points. And for me, the most interesting thing about this horse is that he's here. And, Bob Baffert needs to get points with Barnes, needs to get points with him. He's sending this one to the easier race. Maybe he's a horse that they're just expecting to go to every out. If he can win this race, maybe it's a bad sign. Hard to read what the Bob Baffert stable is intending with this horse. The number 2 is Captain Cook, who's likely to vie for favoritism in here and coming off this victory in the Withers that I think is going to give a lot of handicappers confidence that he'll be just fine going the 9 furlong distance. We'll take a look at the replay of that race. And Mike, he's looked good in both starts since the switch switched to the Rick Dutrow barn. He was an auction purchase for $410,000 away from the prior connections at the end of last year. And both wins for the new barn have been visually impressive, including this win in the Withers. I will say he got a great trip in this race, just perched outside off a moderate pace every step of the way. Never had to deal with kickback. It's also the case in his maiden victory. Never really had any straw in his path. I think it could be a different story here if they try to rate him behind horses. That's an unfamiliar situation for this guy.
Yeah, exactly. It does feel like, especially being drawn to the inside here too, if horses are going from the outside and sort of put him over behind horses, maybe he just gets uncomfortable with it. That being said, I really do like both of his starts for Dutrow. He's just looked really good winning, soft trips or not. And I thought he proved the pace wasn't fast last time. I still thought he proved that he can get the 9 furlongs. His pedigree suggests, at least on the dam side, he could get it anyway. I don't know. To me, he makes plenty of sense in this race. It's your call how short you want to go on him as far as price goes. But in a lot of ways, I thought he was the horse to beat, even with the Baffert horse shipping over.
The number 3 is Tiger 24, who's just stepping way up in class. He only broke his maiden in his most recent start. That was his third attempt. He was going a one-turn mile that day and traveled well towards the front end, but it was a pretty moderate pace for that distance, and he was just able to see it out against an overmatched field. He just has to run a whole lot faster against way tougher horses, Mike.
Yeah, I like the way he's progressing. It does feel he's gotten better with every single start so far for Bill Mott. And he looked good winning last time. It's hard to make too much out of that, David, as you pointed out. It was sort of a slow pace and an easy trip for him. But he took another step forward, and now we'll just see if he can improve again as Mott gets him back out around 2 turns.
Mike, the Gotham, the local prep for this race that was run in early March, it got a pretty high speed figure. Winter Flood Zone got a 98 buyer, and there were some trips in behind that horse. And I guess you could make the argument that the number 4, Mine Mitoli, was one of those because he was so wide every step of the way, and he kind of stayed on at the end, although he did hang on his left lead. Do you think just the ground loss is enough to upgrade him, and do you want him going a little further in distance?
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't think I want him going a little bit further in distance. That bothers me. And I did note that he was very wide in that race, but it's not like he was ever, that far away. To me, the horses that I was looking to upgrade maybe out of the Gotham were the ones who were a little bit further back, just because there was just no closing going on in that race. I don't know. You mentioned that this horse was sort of hanging on his wrong lead in the Gotham, but he does that every single time. Mm-hmm. Even when he broke his maiden, he did finally change it 2 starts back, but it took him forever to do it. I don't know. I think he's okay. I just don't have high hopes for him stretching out.
Speaking of the Gotham, let's take a look at the stretch run of that race as it pertains to the number 5, Sand Devil, who was the runner-up to Flood Zone on that occasion as the 7-5 favorite. And Mike, this is a likable New York bred. He's got a pedigree through and through that's based in New York bred bloodlines for Chester and Mary Broadman going back generations. There is a question, though, about how far he wants to go, and I think that primarily stems from the sire, Violence, who is known as more of a sire, sprinter miler type, so he can get some horses that go longer distances. Just didn't love the way he finished off this Gotham because, as you said, it was mostly dominated towards the front end. He got a good trip to the quarter pole and just could not match the move of Flood Zone when that one kicked away from him late. I still respect what this horse has done from a speed figure standpoint. He fits with this field, and he does have stamina breeding on the bottom side. I just wonder if he's going to have that step forward going this distance.
Yeah, me too. And that's ultimately why I kind of sided against him a little bit. I think he's talented. I like all of his races pretty much. And listen, if you want to be lenient for the Gotham where he lost as the favorite the race we just watched there, listen, Flood Zone clearly improved in his first start for Brad Cox and, sort of jumped up to a 98 buyer. So maybe that's enough of an excuse. Like you, I didn't really love the way Sand Devil finished in there, and I'm not sure, how much of an excuse I really want to give him.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have jumped off him for this race. I set him at 8-1 on the morning line. I think you're going to get something close to that. And based on the speed figures he's run, I'm not sure that's a terrible price on Sand Devil. The number 6 is Hill Road, and he's coming out of that Tampa Bay Derby that was wired on the front end by Owen Almighty. Never really had any chance to make up ground in that spot, Mike. And really, he hasn't had much chance based on the pace in either of his 2 North American starts as the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, another race that was just dominated towards the front end. I'll be interested to see what this horse can do when he gets into a race that features a strong pace, and he could get that on Saturday in this Wood Memorial.
Yeah, might find out. That's right. Might find out as early as Saturday. Listen, I could go either way on this horse, David. And I think at this point, what I'll do is just wait and see what kind of price he is because, listen, Breeders' Cup didn't set up great for him, and he was coming from last. to me, you go back and watch an unbelievable ride from Rispoli, especially got a long shot closer, just never left the inside, took his chances, got the room. And then this horse did run at the end of that race. And I don't know, sort of a similar thing in the Tampa Bay Derby last time. I know it didn't set up for him. I'm not sure I loved it. I'm not sure I thought that he put in some kind of huge finish in there, but he was running at the end. Ultimately, I'm just not sure how good he is. I don't want any kind of a short price on him, but I don't think I'd totally toss him either.
Yeah, and speaking of horses that don't change leads, he has hung on his left lead in the stretch in both of his North American races. Probably starting his career in Europe has something to do with that. The number 7 is Grande. And Mike, he's done everything right in both career starts. Impressive victories against Maiden Company, going a mile at Gulfstream. And then in this race we'll take a look at, they stretched him out to the 2-turn mile and an eighth. So he's already proven going this distance. Didn't face the toughest allowance field in the world, but you had to like the way he did it. He puts away his main rival, Jimmy's Dailies, coming to the quarter pole. Appeared to idle just a little bit when he got into the stretch, but straightens up under John Velasquez, finishes this race off. It really does feel like distance is no concern at all for this horse. It's just a matter of two things: how fast this pace is and whether he needs to be in attendance to it, and whether he can take that slight speed figure step forward that he's going to need to hang with this field.
Exactly. To me, he was the toughest call in the race for me, David, because on one hand, I like both of his races. I think he's looked good winning, and obviously you don't have to worry about distance with him, and that's just going to be key for him going forward. The flip side of it is, he's been in 2 races where they just put him right up on the pace. And they're typical Gulfstream races where he takes over and nobody's doing anything behind this horse. So it just made it really hard for me to evaluate how much I liked those 2 wins in total. It's at least worth pointing out. I think, a few of those horses that he just beat in that replay that we watched there, returned to run in stakes races and got absolutely buried. Like, they just were not competitive at all. So he's just got an awful lot to prove here, and I just thought he was a really tough call.
The number 8, Passion Rules, is another undefeated runner that is coming into this race, making his stakes debut, going out for a powerful stable. He's in the Brad Cox barn, and kind of an interesting runner for Brad Cox because this trader has so many $1 million horses. This is a Calumet auction purchase for $40,000 that has now won 3 in a row, started out in some of those restricted maiden races to get the job done first time out off the turf at that. And Mike, he's done everything right. We'll take a look at the replay of his most recent start where he beat first level allowance competition at Oaklawn. And this is the kind of horse that looks impressive on paper when you look at the running line, but then you watch this replay and you can kind of see the 2 horses that he's running down here are getting very tired at the end. And I just wanted to see him finish off this race with a little bit more vigor.
Yeah, agreed. He looks fine on paper. When you watch on the visuals, he's not quite as impressive here. And this is, I guess you know one thing about him, David. He can close into a fast pace because they went fast in front of him in that replay we were just watching, and they were on fumes in the stretch, and he came and picked them up.
Well, Mike, I guess those looking for a reprise of Lord Miles' upset when he went off at nearly 60-1 and got the job done in the 2023 Wood Memorial have found their horse in the number 9 Bear Claw Necklace, who looks similarly ridiculous on paper, probably more so. Has just never run fast enough to really be considered a contender in a race like this, but he is stretching out to the 2 turns for the first time.
He's just really, really hard to build a case for. He did bump into a pretty good horse last time, off a little bit of a layup, but it's not like he was competitive.
Number 10, McAfee, has a nice pedigree on him. He's a horse that's a half-brother to last year's Horse of the Year, Torpedo Anna, also the Kentucky Oaks winner from 2024. Still has a long way to go to prove he is of that quality, but he looked good on debut, launching from far back to get the job done, going 6 furlongs, despite looking physically like a horse that would want to go a lot longer than that. And he stretched out to the mile in his last couple of starts, Mike, and he was stuck inside in that race that he lost at Churchill, but did stay on to just barely lose that race at the wire. And I'll let you talk about his Gotham a little bit, but not the ideal trip that day.
Yeah, not an ideal trip. I'm with you, first of all, on his first. I know it was a sprint in his debut. I really liked that win. He had a pace in front of him there, but I just liked the way that he came running. And to me, it sort of pointed him out as a horse who had some talent anyway. The Gotham, first of all, things really were not going well for him leading into that race. I mean, it's not like Dutro's plan was to make his 3-year-old debut and they got him. He had 2 different races picked out, and this horse didn't get to run in either of them. And so it's, I think it's fair to give him some consideration for that. And then he just didn't get a good trip at all in that race. If I'm being honest, I would have liked to seen him maybe run a little bit more through the stretch. He didn't really have any kind of a finish, but we've already talked about how it wasn't a race where he necessarily wanted to be closing. They rated this horse early. He got sort of shuffled back behind a horse stopping in front of him around the turn. And then just, Luzzy just had to take him widest into the stretch there. It just didn't work out, David. I'd be willing to give him the benefit of the doubt here. He's second off the layoff now, and he's supposed to be okay going this far.
Yeah, I saw all those same things with the trip, and I agree about the distance. Dutrow has been very vocal about the fact that he disagrees with the regulatory vets in New York, who for some reason don't like this horse and don't let him run sometimes. And he did say that if the track comes up wet, he might not run this horse, but that's Dutrow's typical MO. The number 11 is Statesman, another horse who's coming in, stepping up in class off an allowance victory last time. And took this horse a few tries to really figure things out, Mike. I mean, that's typical of Shug McGahee runners. He brings them along slowly, tries different things. This horse even got a spin over the turf last summer, but it seems like things have clicked in the last couple of starts. And we'll take a look at his most recent race at Tampa when he won this allowance event. And this was visually impressive. I know he wasn't beating much, but there was no pace for him to close into. He was held up in traffic to the quarter pole, and you can see here, he goes off the screen for a moment as he's wheels to the outside, but he unleashes quite the kick to run down this leader at the end.
He's so impressive winning this race. I mean, just really making a late move in that race and just finishing really strongly. Even the maiden win two back, though, like, he was more in range in that race, but you could see him kick in at the end of the race. He had that horse to run down on the lead in front of him, and he came and got that horse. I've actually been really impressed with his last two wins, David. It's one of those things, just because I don't know how much to quantify it, it just bothers me that, he did move forward with Lasix on for those last two races. Now he's got to take it off. I don't know what it means. Maybe it means something and maybe it means nothing, but you do have to, take it into consideration. I like his last two starts quite a bit, though, and I think he's dangerous in here.
Yeah, I'd probably make a little bit less of it with a trainer like Shug McGahee, who does get his horses to make those incremental improvements over time. And like you, I was similarly impressed by the visual of that last race. Rounding out the field is the number 12 Omaha horse, who's been knocking on the door in a few of these Derby preps, picking up minor awards. He is just such a plotter, Mike. He will appreciate if this race comes apart at the end. But even if he does, I think there are other closers in here that have a bit more of a turn of foot than this grinder does.
That's how I looked at it too. I mean, he just needs the wheels to totally come off if he's going to get up in this race. Listen, he likes to look at that pace projector that we showed before. If they go fast in front of him, it helps his chances. He's not my kind of horse. Let's put it that way.
Let's throw up our picks for the Grade 2 Wood Memorial. And Mike, we both got that horse that I pegged at 15-1 in the morning line, the number 11 Statesman in there in the second slot, but you're going to go for a likely even bigger price on top of the number 10 McAfee.
Yeah, I looked at this race several different times, David, and changed my mind a couple times too. I initially did think I was going to go with Statesman on top. I think he's dangerous, but the longer I looked at it, I just feel like maybe giving McAfee a chance here if he's allowed to run in this race. I think he's going to run better than he did in the first start off the layoff there. And I think he's just going to be a really, really good price in this race.
And the longer I looked at this race, the less that I felt that the two horses drawn inside, Rodriguez and Captain Cook, had that much of an edge over this field. I felt like it was a way more competitive race than that as I dived deeper. And I just feel like Grande has been running in spots in his races, idles a bit when he gets to the front, waits on horses. I'm hoping that he can step up his speed figure when he gets into a more competitive field of higher quality horses. That's my hope. I think he could be the fourth choice of those four horses that are likely to take money in this race, or at least from a wagering standpoint, that's what I would need if I was going to bet on him. So 7-11-6-5 for me and 10-11-2-6 for Mike in the Grade 2 Wood Memorial on Saturday at Aqueduct. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.